Hey everyone, Sycra Yasin here, and this is not going to be an art tutorial video, so if that's what you are tuning in for, you might not want to watch this one because I'm just going to be making a video about me, about my story, and it's something I've been putting off for a really long time. Well, first of all, I should explain the reason I wanted to do it. It's not so much want. It was more a case of my own personal values. What I think is that your art and the art and the artist who creates the art are not so separate. They're kind of connected, and to really understand one, you need to understand the other. So anyway, that's my idea that's on the pro side of, well, why is it good to tell your story? And also I figured I'm interested in other people's stories. I figure maybe people would be interested in mine, although I find it hard to believe, but whatever. I have low self-esteem, so I have to imagine that maybe that would be the case. So that's a pro. And then the con is that I don't think I can handle too much criticism, or I just imagine people would say, oh, boo-hoo, what, you think your life's so bad or something, or sort of just make fun of the things I've gone through, because a lot of it is really lame, like just not stuff I'm proud of. And I was afraid of people seeing this who I didn't want to see, specifically my family. I don't really want my family to be knowing some of this stuff, and so it was a case of that. But I've finally gotten to the point where I can realize, first of all, if you are the type of person who would laugh at someone else's suffering, I think that's your problem. Like, I can't let that get to me because, I don't know, I really don't care anymore. I have no respect for a person who would do that. And I've got to think that if it was someone else's story and someone was making fun of them, I would think, wow, that's a jerk to do that. And so maybe I have to stand up for myself too. And then the other thing about certain people knowing who I don't want to know, that's tough, but actually that's really, really, really hard. That's the hardest thing, is that part of it. And that is why this is not easy. Being honest is not easy. And I figure, okay, well, let's do it anyway. In the background, I am going to be showing pictures from my secret sketchbook because, hey, we're going to be open and expose ourselves and stuff, right? Why not show the secret sketchbook? And so, starting off, I was born in Oldham in 1984. And Oldham is it's near Manchester in England. And it's, I think it was a cotton factory town. Like, I recall smokestacks and gray skies. Life wasn't great for me when I was growing up. My parents would fight a lot. My dad worked in a different town, and he would come over on the weekends, and then I just remember a lot of yelling and hitting, and my mom crying a lot, and she would get beaten up, and I would get beaten up, and it was just very it sucks because the person I hated the most in my life was my dad. I hated him coming over on the weekends, and I physically resemble him. So when I was young, all the time people would say, oh, you look just like your dad. Oh, he's just like his dad and stuff. And it's like, I didn't really feel that way. I didn't want to be anything like him. Very, very angry. A bit of a backstory about my parents. They're from Uganda. My mom was from India, and she left, I think, when she was 2 to Uganda, which is in East Africa. And I think when my mom was around 9 years old, 8 or 9, there was this dictator in Uganda called Idi Amin. And for anyone who's seen The Last King of Scotland, it's the dude from that movie. And what he decided is that the Asians, so this is including the Indians, and they were taking the jobs away from Africans. So my parents, my whole culture, I'm from an Ismaili culture, which is a minority sect of Shia Islam. It's like the minority within a minority within a minority, and they were kicked out of the country, and all their belongings were left behind. So everyone was like a refugee. And I think my mom, when she was 9, she said that she was in a Paris prison or something, and that because they were all trying to escape, and so they were the people, the Asians from East Africa, they sort of spread out, and the Ismailis, they went to Canada and England and other parts of the world, and my parents ended up in England. So from a young age, they were in this new environment, and my dad had a bunch of jobs, and I think when he was 15, he got injured or something in a factory. Something fell on his head, and anyway, and my dad told me about some event where in Africa he saw some guy steal a banana, and then people chased him and hacked him to pieces with machetes, and it's just like, well, that's pretty terrible. So when I say my dad was angry, I guess he had a lot of reason to be angry. He went to a country that there was a lot of racism, and people wrote on the door like "Go home, Paki" and stuff. Though we were not from Pakistan, but whatever. And it's a thing where growing up, there was much hatred in me for my dad, but other than that, I was pretty happy. I remember, well, I don't really remember, but I'll explain that later. But I understand that when I was very young, I would get beaten up maybe, and I would be crying, and then I would go to sleep, and I would think today wasn't very good, but maybe tomorrow is going to be better. And I'll be very hopeful for that. Like, oh, tomorrow's going to be better. And never really was. But, yeah. And I was very smart for my age. That's what everyone would say. Like, oh, yeah, you're smart. And I figure I was, because I taught myself how to read when I was 2, and taught myself how to tie my shoelaces and stuff. And my mom was working a lot, and when she was home, I guess she was taking care of my brother. And so I was hanging out with my sister a lot. That was the person I really liked and I trusted a lot. And then I didn't really trust anybody else. I had some friends, because I was, my mom, when I was born, there were 2 kids who were born, we were all born within the same week or something, and we became friends because our parents were in the hospital, or our moms were in the hospital together, and they all, I guess, got to know each other. And so I liked the friends that I had, and then my sister, and we would spend time together, and it was good. But I started to really not like other people too much. I did not like my parents. I did not like my extended culture, really. But it was very religious. The Ismailis seem to be very attached to their religion, because I figure it's something that unites them. They don't really have their own country. They were, a lot of them were anyway kicked out to of the place they were living, and they lost everything. So it's like, well, what connects you? Your language and your religion. So I grew up with this idea of the religion, and I was very believing in it, I guess. I really felt this idea of God, or Allah as we call it, and so I always felt this, but there was something that really bothered me about the idea of Allah, and that was that in the Ismaili faith and in Muslim religion in general, you're sort of taught to fear God, and what I felt was not that. I felt like, well, my understanding of God is someone, or not someone, because this is something good about Islam, is it doesn't think of God as this dude with a big beard. It's rather just, it's something you can't comprehend. And I like the ideas like that, like it's light upon light and stuff. And it's like, oh yeah, that's nice. But yeah, I never felt it was something to be afraid of. And I kind of felt like it was, like God was my friend, and my, we're taught like, God is, you know, kind of like a father figure / mother figure. And I felt like that, like, okay, I don't really like my parents, but God can be my parent, and that's a better parent. And so I thought, okay, so this is good, believing in this. But yeah, I didn't like other people much around me, and I didn't go out much, and pretty much watched TV a lot. But when I would go out, it would be with my sister. And then one time I was out with my sister, and she, we went out walking, and she took me to this dog, and it was a black dog, and it was big, and she pet it, and she was fine, and she told me to go pet it, and I pet it, and it bit me. And I think I don't know how old I was, probably like 3, 4. And anyway, I was crying. And I was just thinking that, oh, I can't trust my sister either. And then we moved to another town called Nottingham from Oldham, and I ended up losing like the few friends I had, and it was hard for me, but it was still like, whatever, still hoping that, okay, maybe tomorrow will be better. Because I have a lot of stories and things about, you know, abusive things that my parents did, or even people, like one time at school, I was in class, and there was a kid, and he was reading, and the teacher was, you know, with him, and he was trying to read and figure something out, and he couldn't. And I whispered in his ear what the word was, and the teacher saw that, and then she started yelling at me, and she taped my mouth shut, and so for the rest of the day, I just had to have my mouth taped shut. And then my mom picked me up from school, and she didn't really ask, you know, like what happened, or I think I mentioned the teacher did it, and she didn't say anything. And then peeled off the tape, and like my lip was on the tape, and I just started bleeding. And I guess that taught me that, I don't know, people can really get away with a lot, but it didn't feel fair. And the teacher was really mad at me because I was the brown kid in the class, and I don't think she really cared for brown people too much. In other situations, I got hit in the head by my brother with a toy boat. I don't hold him responsible or anything, but what was annoying to me is anytime I did something bad, I would get beaten up for it. But my brother hit me on the head with a boat, and I still have a bump in my head from where this was, and my face just was covered in blood, and my dad was laughing because he thought this was funny that my brother did this. And again, it's just, this is not fair. Things like my mom would threaten me with the iron and say that she was gonna burn me with the iron, and then luckily she never did, but I would have nightmares all the time of just being chased with an iron and being burned. But she did burn me with incense, and she burned the back of my neck and pushed me outside. And this was common, that they would push me outside, my mom anyway, like, basically say things like, oh yeah, you know, well, not, oh yeah, but like, oh, I didn't want you, and you're not my son, or stuff like that. Just, I don't know. Anyway, so in Nottingham, there was I didn't have friends in school, and I was very upset about, I mean, I had one friend, I think, but it wasn't like a close friend. And there was one day I came home, and I think my dad was around more often in Nottingham than when we were in Oldham. And I don't remember why, but I ended up getting beaten up. And I went to my room, and after I would get beaten up, I usually ran to my room and hid under my blanket and cried, because I didn't want anyone to see me crying. One time this happened, and I went to my room. I was under the blankets, and I heard a voice in my head, and it said, like, you can't trust these people. You can't trust anyone. And it wasn't my voice, it was like another voice, and it was much older and deeper. And then this voice continued, and it said, so what we're going to do is, you're not going to be dealing with the world anymore, because you can't trust them, and they're going to hurt you. And there's going to be someone out who will deal with the world, and you can stay behind, and then we'll take all your sadness and all your anger and all your pain and put it in another person. And I haven't, like, I've done a lot of research into dissociative disorders, because, I mean, obviously I'm someone who likes to figure things out. I've never heard this before, this idea that you consciously separate it, like an entity comes out and then actually dictates terms. Usually what I hear is, during a traumatic event, you sort of dissociate and you're no longer in your body, and then another personality comes in and takes that, whatever is going on, and then you switch. But for me, it wasn't that way. It was, this personality came out and sort of said, no, you can't trust anyone. And so from being one person, I became three people. No, four, because there was the original me, and I didn't name my personalities. It's not like I had one called Bob and one called John or anything like that. But later on, I had to name them in order to talk with therapists and stuff. So I'll use the names that I came up with much, much later, but just know that at the time I wasn't calling them that. Now I should explain about my name. So I was born Yasin Kotedia, so Yasin is my original first name, and ever since I was young, I kept thinking I'm going to change my name because I don't want to associate with my family. I just wanted to be called Yasin, like that's it. No last name. No, I have no middle name, which is nice. My dad gave me my name, and the way he told me what it means is, well, there's a mountain called Yasin, and then there's a chapter in the Quran called Sycra Yasin, and the name itself, no one knows what Yasin means, and only God knows what it means. That's what I was told, and I really liked that. Like, oh, because I kind of felt like that. I felt really misunderstood all the time. And I felt like, yeah, only God knows what I am. And so, anyway, so we would refer to each other in my head as Yasin, but there would be, the first one was the inner child. So that's me before anything happened. And then the first voice that came out, that would be the narcissistic. And we called him the narcissistic because he always would talk about Yasin in the third person, but he's always talking about the inner child. So we would say things like, we must protect Yasin. Yasin's worth more than these other people and stuff. And so it sounded funny to one of the other personalities who came later and named us. And so he called him the narcissistic. And then there was the fraud. And the fraud was the one who was going to be outside dealing with everyone. And no one would know that that wasn't really us. It was just a fake us. It was just a fraud. And then there was the darkness. And the darkness was just the collection of all the anger and hatred and sadness I felt. And that way, I could go through my life and I wouldn't be sad all the time. I wouldn't be crying all the time. And no one would know. And they couldn't really hurt me. That's the way I thought of it. Like, they wouldn't know me. I didn't want them to know me. And they couldn't hurt me. And I talked about my story before, but I've talked only about the art side of it. I mentioned how the first portrait I drew was of my dad. And that's true. I mean, nothing I said was a lie. I just excluded context. And yeah, when it came to art, it wasn't such a big thing in my life, but really what was going on a lot was trying to figure stuff out. My parents they weren't around, and as time went on, they were around less because my mom would work more and more. And so, I think it was in Nottingham, but my mom stopped making lunches for us, and she said, okay, you have to make lunch for yourself now. And I remember thinking it was really, I didn't really know how, and I didn't ask my parents things because I just didn't talk much. I would just do my own thing. After the event with my sister, I didn't really talk to her much either, but I started talking to my brother more. And I started being his friend more, and I didn't really feel like I could talk to my sister. But anyway, because we had to make lunch for ourselves, I just didn't, and ended up getting very skinny because I was barely eating. And as I got older, I grew really self-conscious about that. Like, if I took off my shirt, you'd be able to count all the ribs. And my parents really didn't care about food in that way. Like, oh, you must finish your meals. So I don't know, I never felt hungry. I just didn't eat much. But yeah. So after I split into these personalities, I didn't tell anybody that anything was different. And I don't know if anyone noticed. Certainly in my house, nobody noticed. And so when I was 7, we moved to Canada. And this was in 1992. And I guess maybe I was 8. Anyway, yeah, I was 8. And then we lived with my grandparents. My dad's side of the family lived in Canada and Vancouver mostly. And my mom's side lived in England. And my mom's side of the family didn't really like me. And my mom didn't like me, but she liked my brother a lot. And there was a time, this was in Oldham, but I went out with my brother, and he had stolen money from my mom's purse. And he went out or the two of us went to a corner store and bought 1 pence candy. And then my brother put the candy in his mouth and went home. And my dad was there, and then he saw that my brother had stolen the candy, and the candy was in his mouth, and my dad slapped my brother, and the candy like spat out of his mouth. And then my mom yelled at my dad for hitting my brother, and so my dad never hit my brother. And from what I heard, the first time my dad hit my mom was when she was pregnant with my older sister, and apparently my sister got hit a lot before I was born. But after that, it was pretty much just me, and I would get beaten up, and like I remember my brother and sister were there in the room, and they looked like it was very awkward to be there. And then, oh no, sometimes my brother did get hit. Yeah, that's true. Sometimes he would get hit, because I remember comparing stamps. We called them stamps because whenever my dad hit us, it would leave marks, and we would say, oh, look, we got stamps. And because the skin would turn all red and stuff. And then anyway, so in Canada, it was actually much better. I moved to a place called Richmond, and it was with my grandparents, and the school was right across the street. So for the first time, my grandma was actually making lunch for us, and my mom was working like 5 jobs at this time. And my dad, he was an electrical engineer, and he was a dean at a college in England. And when he moved to Canada, they weren't accepting his credentials. So he wasn't really like working at his job. He would need to go to school to earn back his degree. And I think it would only take him like a year, but he didn't want to do this. So my mom ended up, she's a nurse. And so she has all these crazy hours where she would get called, late at night and do a bunch of shifts. She ended up just working more and more jobs to the point that she was just, all the time at the hospital, and different hospitals, just working like 5 places. And then my dad, he started selling vacuums and like door-to-door salesman stuff, like the Salad Master thing and encyclopedias and stuff. And that was taking a toll on his self-esteem, and it was making him very angry as well. He had a lot of anger issues. With my mom, it was more guilt. She would say things more about how, oh, it's our fault, and if she didn't have kids, she wouldn't have to work so much, and then she'd be free and she could leave my dad and stuff. And I just remember feeling so guilty, and also so afraid of money, because I felt like it was money that was making it so my mom had to work so much. And I just kept, like, I would tell her, like, you don't have to work so much, we don't need that much money. And it's not like there's a ton of money. But when we first moved anyway, my dad did have money from his old job, so we ended up buying like a pretty decent sized house. But it wasn't in the same area as my grandparents. It was in Delta, which is more rundown, at least in the area. It's sort of, there's like a rich side and a poor side, and we're right near the middle of the division between the two sides. But I went to a school that was more poor. I guess more poor kids would go to that school, and there's a lot more discrimination in Richmond. It was fine. Nobody really made fun of me. I seemed like I had a lot of friends. But in Delta, it was different. It's like, no, I was just this loser kid. I was a new kid. No one wanted to hang out with me. And it was very strange. I felt pretty lonely. I did find, like, I would always have, like, one friend until that friend would decide that I'm not cool anymore. And then I would have to find a new friend. But I would draw a lot and read a lot, and I learned a lot about astronomy and dinosaurs and mythology. I learned a lot about like all the Greek myths and how they differ from the Roman myths, and just interested in that stuff. I don't know. I felt like I was pretty nerdy. I really liked Star Trek, like Star Trek Next Generation. I thought it was something my dad liked also, so we shared that in common. And so, yeah, Delta kind of sucked. I didn't have many friends until around grade 6. I found there's like a bunch of mean kids, mean-ish. I mean, they would make fun of me and make fun of everybody pretty much. And I realized all they were doing is just swearing a lot and saying like rude stuff, like, or, oh, you fuck donkeys and stuff. And I thought, this is easy. I can do this. Like, if this is all it takes, then sure. So I started doing this and coming up with jokes and insults, and people would laugh, and I became popular by just being a jerk. And so it became this thing where the people who were making fun of me started to like me, and I had friends. And one of these friends, in grade 7, we started making these this like card game together, and we would play Dungeons and Dragons and stuff. And we're thinking of this world, and he came up with the name Sycra, and he's like, oh, we should call the magic Sycra. And I thought, oh, okay, so like Psychra, or like, you know, like psychic. And he's like, no, Sycra. And I thought, okay, all right, so we'll call the magic in this world Sycra. And then we were friends for pretty much all of high school. But when, so grade 7, in Canada, you have like elementary school that goes from grade, I think, 1, 2, something, to grade 7. And then you have high school, which is either broken into junior high and senior high. But it goes from 8 to 12 in Vancouver, anyway, in British Columbia. I think in Toronto it goes to 8 to 13 or something. But anyway. In the last year of elementary school, I was very popular, and kids liked me because I was doing this being mean thing. By this time, though, I had another personality who was called we had the home fraud, or I had the home fraud, and then the school fraud. And the school fraud was the same as the home fraud, but I realized the home fraud was me at home, and then I needed something to deal with school, and so I made a school fraud. And basically every time I had a new experience that I couldn't handle with any of my existing personalities, I would create a new one that would then deal with that and develop. So whereas normal people, or most people, would just evolve, like you learn new things, I wouldn't learn new things, and every state I was in was fixed from the moment it was created. I could have an increased vocabulary, but the way I thought was very much the same. So from grade 7 to grade 8, going from elementary school to high school, suddenly everything changed for me, and everyone was obsessed with what clothes you wear and what music you listen. What clothes and music, that was already a thing, but it started getting into like drugs and alcohol and stuff, and I wasn't into any of that. So I couldn't really keep up with the cool kids anymore. Like I couldn't maintain this, oh, you're sort of popular. And so I just started hanging out with well, at first I was hanging out with my friends who were like the guy who came up with Sycra and a few of the others. And then a friend I used to have who I was best friends with, we were really close friends. He was a new kid, and I always like wanted to be around the kids that were bullied, because I felt, I don't know if I felt sorry for them, but more just compassion, and I felt they were interesting. So I would always be friends with the new kid usually, and so I was friends with him for a while, and we're really close friends. But then some other popular kid told the kid that I wasn't cool, and then suddenly the next day he just wouldn't talk to me. And then in high school he ended up being friends with some of my friends, and I didn't really want to get involved in, it felt awkward to be around him, so I just left. And then a bunch of the other kids were egging him on to fight me, and so he wanted to fight, and I didn't understand it. Like, we were really good friends, and now you're trying to fight me because other people told you to. It was stupid. So high school was rough for me. And it wasn't until grade 11 that I was taking, I took art classes, but the art classes weren't really good. I've read comments of people who have expressed this, that no, they don't really learn much from their art classes. For me, it was similar. There was a lot of cutting up National Geographic magazines and collage and paper mache masks and stuff, but I just wanted to draw, and there wasn't much of that. But I did have a graphics class. And in the graphics class, the teacher did teach us actually how to draw, and that was great. And she was really nice. She would leave the door open after school, and if you wanted to come in and draw, you could. And so I would come and draw, and then she... let's go back to grade 8. So anyway, there's another kid in grade 8, another new kid who came in to the school, and because I didn't have, I kind of left my old friends, I ended up friends with this new kid, and I got to the point where I felt comfortable with him, and I told him, I think I have more than one personality, and then he just started making fun of me and saying no, you don't, and you're just you just want attention and stuff. And I don't know, I wasn't sure if he was right, because the thing is, my whole life I had at that point, I was not sure. I would have moments where it's I think this is real because I hear more than one voice in my head. And I would have gaps in my memory where I wouldn't know what I had been doing, and I'd wake up in different places, and it felt no, I think this is real. And then I would kind of believe in it, oh yeah, I have multiple personalities. And then after a while, it would be wait, did I just make this up? Am I just craving attention and I'm making a story up? But I wasn't telling anybody, so it's not like there was much in it for me. But after that was kind of the first friend I thought, oh, maybe I could talk to him about this. And then from his reaction, I decided, nope, I don't want to get made fun of. And so it wasn't until grade 11 in the graphics class after school, and the teacher told me, she's like, you are so different in class and after school, but it's not normal. Everything about you changes. The way you talk, your height changes, your voice changes, you are a different person. And she didn't understand it. And I felt really happy. The first time someone actually noticed me. I had this thing before with girls and noticing me. It felt like no girl ever noticed me. I had 2 girls I confessed feelings for, and it was not returned. One of them just said, "Oh, yeah, that's nice. I could use all the love I can get, and thanks and stuff." And after it was like nothing. So yeah, I was very happy that this teacher seems to notice things, and I actually ended up feeling comfortable, and I told her my story. I told her, where this came from, where these things with the personalities came from, about my abusive child. It's still abusive, but anyway. She said she wasn't surprised, and then the next time I saw her, I think the next day or maybe next class, we met after school as usual, because I was always there after school, and she had talked to me about this condition, the dissociative identity disorder, and she's like, "I think you have this," and she showed me a forum for people with D.I.D, as it's called, and I was reading it, and it's like, this is so close, but not quite, because all of the people I read about, they had different named personalities, and for me, it was all Yasin, like, this personality is Yasin, that personality is Yasin, because I knew who I was. I knew the different parts. I didn't need to call them different names. So it was a case of just being, like, I didn't feel like, oh, I'm the same as them. I felt I'm similar but different. But a lot of the things I recognized, like the memory loss, and I would have, voices in my head. There was never one thing. If I saw something, there wasn't just one opinion. There was always a debate in my head. And what she recommended is that I talk to the counselors, the school counselors. And I thought, one counselor in particular. And I thought, I don't know, I don't really want to do this, but at the same time, she's the first person who ever showed any care towards me. And so I thought, I cannot dishonor her. I didn't feel like I could refuse her anything. And so what happened was I ended up seeing a counselor, and this is where the naming thing came in, like the narcissistic and stuff. And at that point, I counted how many personalities there were, and there were over 30 at that point. But there were a few main ones that always showed up. And so I labeled those, and there was the inner child, and then there was the primal, and the primal was like this non-entity, just like a not really thinking being, very just primitive, couldn't speak, couldn't do much. Then there was the frauds, the school fraud and the home fraud. Then there was the cautious, and the cautious was very empathetic towards people. He just absorbed all the feelings all the time, and the problem with him is it was way too much emotion all the time, so he would often feel like crying, and it didn't feel feasible. But he was very nice. He was really soft-spoken. And then there was a neutral, and the neutral was sort of the one who would talk to the others and smooth things over. And then there was the narcissistic, and the narcissistic would pick on the cautious for being weak and being, very emotional, because the narcissistic was not. He was very rational and also quite full of himself and mean. And then there was the apathetic, who had no emotions at all. And then there was, who else? There's the chaotic, who was very random. And with him, it would be cases where I would switch into him, and I would not be aware, and then I would be aware of being, like, there was a time where I was talking with a friend, and then I switched, and then the next thing I know, the friend was like, his eyes were all watery, and I like, what happened? And he had told me about his grandma dying, and I was just laughing hysterically at him, and I didn't remember that, and stuff like that. Oh, and there's a perverted. The perverted was just all of us except him are asexual, like no sexual desire at all except for him, but he has like a ton of it. So it's really extreme. He's very on the fringes, and we sort of disowned him. We're like, no, you do your thing on your time, but other than that, I don't know. And then there was there's the darkness, who I mentioned, and he became this like a father figure to us. He if I was to explain what it was like, it's like, okay, if you could imagine a room that's all dark and it's circular, all along the edge of the room are a bunch of figures, and they're all in the darkness, and like the dark, not the darkness, the personality. And then in the middle of the room, you have like a seat, and there's a spotlight on it, and whoever is in charge of the body is sitting down in that seat. Well, with the darkness, he felt like the ceiling, just this overwhelming black, smoky thing. And he created some rules for us. And some of the rules were dumb because I was young when I first created them, and I was still very much into my religion. One of the things was like I had 5 of them. I wouldn't smoke. I wouldn't drink. I wouldn't eat pork because Muslims don't eat pork. I wouldn't get married, and I wouldn't do something else. Anyway, and then there are other rules. Like, he was very rule based, and anytime the narcissistic was getting out of line, like anytime he would pick on the other personalities, and it might, like, how do you pick on personalities? Well, the thing is, this is going to sound kind of stupid and anime-like, but it's about willpower. And for instance, the narcissistic had a stronger will than the cautious. So if the cautious was out, the narcissistic could stop him from using his hand, for instance. The narcissistic was also very good at controlling things like body temperature. I could be in a freezing cold place, and then he could set it so I would feel really warm. And just, he had a lot of these abilities, canceling pain and stuff like that. And so, those were the personalities. At this point, I started taking Taekwondo as well. I wanted to take Taekwondo when I was young, or any martial art. I really liked martial arts, but my dad wouldn't allow it because probably didn't want me to be able to defend myself. But eventually, when I got old enough, I was able to do it. On top of the darkness. So yeah, there's a darkness, and then there's one higher. So when I was 9 years old, ish, I'm not sure exactly. I think I was like 9 or 10. In the Ismaili religion, in Muslim religion in general, but there's a day called Laylatul Qadr, and it means night of power. And basically, you stay up all night. And for other Muslim religions, I think there's a bunch of days it could be, but in the Ismaili faith, they believe it's just one night that this happens. And so one of these years in this, what happens is you stay up all night and you go to Khane, which is kind of like a church. It's like the temple. It's called Khane. And you just like pray and do all these things all night. And one of these times, I had this thing happen where I was praying, and then suddenly everything felt light, like there was lights everywhere, but the strong feeling of light and warmth. And I felt like love just from everywhere, from all around me. It was this feeling of intense brightness and love. And in that moment, I forgave everybody for anything bad that happened to me. I felt so at peace and calm and transcendent. And then it ended. And I was thinking, there is a type of this event can occur in Muslim religion or Ismaili. I don't know if it's just us or if it's with others. But anyway, the teachings were saying things like, if you experience this, you'll have no doubt about it. And for me, I actually did have doubt, because I was like, wait, did I experience that thing? And then I thought, well, no, because I'm asking the question. And if I'm asking the question, I must have doubt. And if I have doubt, then I guess I didn't. But that's the one we call the enlightened, because the thing is, with me, anytime I have a new experience, or I used to have a new experience, a new personality would be created. But I could also return to any experience I ever had in my life instantly. So it's just like, do you want to be enlightened? Flip the switch. Now you're enlightened. And then, oh, now you're not. So I could access this at any time. And what I was told is, no, you have to meditate and do a bunch of stuff to get into this. And so I started thinking, oh, I guess I didn't have this experience. But I really remembered it because it was very powerful as an experience. So anyway, back to graphics class and my teacher. So I ended up seeing the counselors, and they found a specialist in dissociative identity disorder who I could work with. And at first, the counselors didn't really believe that I had this until they started talking to me. And then it was like, okay, so then I would talk with one counselor, for instance. And then by the end of it, it's like, okay, never mind, you do have this. And then it was a case of having to sort of convince everybody, because they would always come in with, are you faking this? So eventually, they were all convinced, and they came up with a plan of what needs to be done. And they talked about integration. And they said, what's going to happen is you are going to become one super personality with all the abilities of your other personalities in one. Because I was really afraid of when they said integration and they said you're going to become one personality. I was like, but what's going to happen to my things that I can do? Like, I don't want to be normal. I can do all these. I have all these abilities normal people don't have. And they're like, no, it's going to be fine. You're going to be one super personality. And with, and they wanted a personality to talk to. And they said, this is what's going to happen. What happened with you is every time you're in a new environment or you're experiencing something new, you switch personalities. And instead, you're going to not switch. And what's going to happen is the new personality is going to, or the whatever personality is fixed, you just stay that personality all the time. And then they are going to learn to deal with each new event. And then they're going to get stronger and stronger. And the narcissistic hated this idea. He thought this was really stupid, and that these people were interfering with us and with Yasin in general. And so he was opposed to it. And then eventually the neutral was talking to him a lot, and they decided, fine. The narcissistic said, fine, okay, you can try this, but I don't like the idea of this, and it's on you whether it works or not. But he couldn't argue with the neutral, saying this could be helpful for the child, me, the inner child, the first one. And the first one, the one I was when I first created it. No one knows where that went. That just never showed up again. So to this date, I have no idea where it's why I have memory goneness, loss of memory. A lot of my memories are really strange because I have big gaps. But anyway, so the therapist decided that the cautious was the chosen one, and he was going to be our personality. But what happened was he was too emotional, and they had difficulty with him because he was always crying all the time and being affected. I was always affected by things, even when I wasn't the cautious. But anyway, I couldn't understand people. This was something that happened my whole life, just not being able to understand people. We were learning about, like in social studies class, it was called. It's basically history and geography and stuff stuck together. But I remember learning about World War I and World War II, and people would be sitting in the class and just, oh yeah, this many people died and whatever. And I couldn't understand it. This idea of war was very hard for me. And they showed us videos of the Holocaust, and so they show this video, and then the bell rings and everyone gets up and goes away, and I was frozen and I couldn't understand how humans could do this. I hated them so much. I just had this, like, at least with my parents, it's fine, okay, I don't like them, but just people and what they were capable of, I really was afraid of them. And the narcissistic would say about how, well, they're not like us, we're different, we're not like them. But yeah, just being more sensitive. So anyway, they tried the cautious as a personality, and that wasn't working out. So they switched to the neutral because he was always mediating, and he never came out. He wasn't a personality who would come out. He would just stay behind the scenes and make sure, okay, convince this argument, talk about this, talk about that. And then he was out more and more so like he was chosen to come out, and then he started taking over because that was the deal. You leave one out, and that one personality does not switch. You must stay that personality and deal with all the different parts of your life as that one personality. And I tried to do that. I had a lot of difficulty at home because I would automatically revert to my home fraud. And around my school friends, it was difficult because I already had an established relationship. And with some of them I could do it, and with others I couldn't. But I did this anyway. And I was seeing my teacher, my graphics class teacher. I don't know whether to give her a fake name or not. It's pretty, if you're a detective, you can figure out her name, because whatever. Anyway, I don't know. I'm not going to protect her. Her name was Charlene. So with Charlene, she would talk to the neutral after school, and she would help him with art. She's the one who taught me perspective, just looking at the room, and then she drew, and she could draw really well. So yeah, she was, I would kind of go to the therapy thing, and then I would talk to her about it and talk about art. And I would stay after school, and she started, because I guess my case was kind of different. She would sort of shoo everyone else out of the room and then lock the door so we could talk about what was actually going on with me. And then I lived pretty far away. So it was like a 40-minute walk. And she started driving me home. And at one of the times she was driving me home, she said this thing of, I have a crush on you. And I was like, what? Like, what do you mean you have a crush? I didn't say what, but I felt really stuck because she was the first person who saw me as who I really was. And I didn't want to disappoint her. And it's stupid, but I so didn't want to disappoint her that I just told her, like, oh, maybe I have a crush on you too. And then she's, I don't know, that was weird, but over time, she would still drive me home. And one time she put her hand on my hand, and I started crying, and I couldn't stop crying because it was the first time someone touched me without wanting to hit me. So, like with my mom, I used to, when she would come home, I tried to hug her, but she would always push me away. And eventually I just stopped. If I tried to do anything nice, she would say things like, oh, what do you want? You just want something from me. And so anyway, with this, with Charlene, the teacher, I don't know, I couldn't stop crying, but then I did eventually, obviously. And, she got out of the car, and then another time she hugged me, and again, it was the first time I was hugged, and really felt cared for. And then things sort of escalated in a way I didn't want them to. Our relationship became a real relationship, and she started telling me things about how, nobody can know, and if anyone finds out, they're going to think of her as a monster, but she loved me and I loved her, and how could that be wrong, and why is that evil, and stuff. And so people were starting to get suspicious, though, and I was, and what Charlene did is she would give me these newspaper articles of teachers and students who had relationships and what happened. And she's like, oh, I would lose my job if anyone found out. And I don't know why I didn't know. Okay, so she had 2 kids and a husband, and I should have known that because in grade 8, I had taken a class with her for a short time, and she had to go on maternity leave, but I somehow forgot entirely that she had children and a husband until grade 11, where it's like, okay, this came up and I felt really bad, and I started telling her, we can't do this, we can't have this relationship. And it's like, oh, I know it's bad, but we care about each other. And she would always tell me that she was going to leave her husband and things were going to be okay with us. And anyway, I had the counselors, and they were asking me questions, trying to find out, because Charlene let me know that the staff was suspicious of us having a relationship. And I mean, with due course, because we were having sex and stuff. And I think there was one time in particular, she was in a graphics class, which also had a photography room attached. And we, a dark room, and we would go in there. And one time she locked the door, but some maintenance people came in. And then we were putting on our clothes quickly before they came in. And then they came into the room, and she was hiding her hand behind her back with her underwear in her hand. And we're just doing photography stuff. And they looked really confused and just left. But yeah, so I was told that this stuff was suspicious, and I had to talk to them. And then they were trying to figure out oh, do you have a relationship? But I was pretty good at talking my way out of things. And and convincing myself of things. Like I could lie by, the narcissistic could program me, for instance, with a false memory, and then I would believe that memory, and then I could lie and it would sound like the truth because I believed it was the truth. But with this, it wasn't even that necessary. Just talked and made them think that no, nothing is going on, nothing is wrong. But I started feeling really guilty, and I said, like, I don't feel good about, you have a husband and all this, and you said you would leave him, but you haven't left him. And she's like, oh yeah, I know, I'm just waiting for the right time. And eventually what happened is she told me I can't tell anybody, like, this is very important, I can't tell anybody. But what she did is she ended up telling her husband that, oh, she's having a relationship with her student, and he went crazy, like literally. He started to lose his mind. But he was a lawyer, and he had a bunch of friends who were police officers. And what he ended up learning how to do was hack into emails and trace phone calls and all this stuff. And I had a forum online, and it was called the Sycra forum. And the reason I called things Sycra is because I used to call, my alias used to be Devil Knight, and then my friend took my name, and he was calling himself Devil Knight, and so I switched to Sycra because it's, oh yeah, there was that thing, and I kind of like that name. So I had the Sycra forum, and I didn't know this, but one of the forum members was actually her husband, and he was pretending to be just some guy who was into art. And I didn't know this for a very long time, but things got really bad because their marriage was, not well after he found out about this. And I was just asking her, like, why did you tell him if you told me I can't tell anybody? And she's like, oh, I thought he would be able to handle it. And then it was just like, they ended up fighting. I mean, obviously fighting a lot, and the kids were suffering. She had 2 young kids, and they started getting like stomach pains and things, and had a lot of problems because of all the fighting that was going on. And with Paul, the husband, sorry, he was doing things like he started following me wherever I would go. And one time he told her, oh, I followed him all day yesterday, and I was going to run him over. And it was just like weird hearing this, like, oh, someone's wants me dead. And because he's a lawyer, he probably could get away with it. I don't know. But it was really bad for me. And the personality thing being integrated wasn't good either, because what I was told is, oh, you will become this super personality, but that's not what it was. It was called integration, but I felt it should be called segregation, because all you do is you separate the personalities and you just make the one able to do more and more things. But it didn't feel like I had all my abilities, but I couldn't stop this relationship with the teacher. And I blamed myself for it. I hated myself. Now that I look back, it's like, well, you have a 16-year-old. They're not quite intelligent enough to make an educated decision of what they should do with their lives. Probably some of you are around that age, or maybe younger, and you don't really know how dumb you are until you get older. And it's like, oh wow, yeah. I don't know, maybe for you it's different. Maybe you're more mature than I was, because I was not capable of handling things. But anyway, so he was on my forum, and we actually were kind of friends on the forum, because he was interesting when he would talk. And I didn't know who it was, by the way. He used a fake name. But at some point, I got so guilty about what was going on with me and this relationship, and how it was ruining a marriage. And I told her, told the teacher, like, I can't do this. I have to break this off. And she said she can't leave me. And what I interpreted is that she wants to leave me, but she just can't, because she would say like, oh, I'm going to leave him, but then not do that. Or so I interpreted it as, okay, she can't leave him, and I'm going to have to leave her. And what I did is I wrote an email to him, and I let him know, like, I know your wife said we don't see each other anymore, and because he had made like an ultimatum. He was not letting her do anything, not letting her go out or anything. And then I said, yeah, but we have been still, and I want you to know that I am ending things, and I'm really sorry, and sorry for all that I've done, and how much I fucked up your life and stuff, and that it's gonna be over. And what happened is the next day at school, she was furious with me because she had found the email, and before he got to see it, she deleted it. And so one of the things I was doing with her was we would have these long talks, and she would explain things to me, and she was explaining to me how all humans weren't evil, and how my hatred for them wasn't all there needs to be and stuff. And I used her as my focus, and it's just a person who or it could be an object, but just something that holds you together. And before, it was the darkness, the ceiling, the hatred and the pain and the sadness would actually hold us all together. And as time went on, she became our focus, and the darkness started to lose power. And then at one point, he said something like, doesn't matter what we do because people, I don't know, they're messed up anyway or something. I don't remember, but it was something that he wasn't allowed to say that because he was an ideal in our minds. He was always right. He was always looking out for us. And even though he was made up of hatred and pain and sadness, he would protect us. Like I remember being in a fight before where someone, like a bunch of kids grabbed me, and this other kid punched me, and I remember like a tear came down my cheek because it wasn't that it hurt, because whatever. I mean, I've been beaten up a lot, so it's not about the pain, but it was just how unfair it was. Like, this is stupid. You can't fight me one-on-one. And what happened is, because I let a tear out in public, this is probably when, I don't know, grade 5, maybe? Anyway, the darkness came out. And when the darkness comes out, I sort of lose consciousness, kind of. I'm just not in control. And he is really, really strong. So he overpowered the other kids and went after this kid and beat the shit out of him. But it was this feeling of like so much strength, so much power. Although I was still very skinny. I don't know, weird stuff can happen with this dissociation stuff. So anyway, the darkness saying this was like, you're like kind of like the dude, I don't even know you anymore. So he just sort of disappeared after that. He said this, and people looked at him like, what are you? And so that's how the darkness died. And we replaced him with our new focus, which was Charlene, to the dismay of the narcissistic, because he hated Charlene. The narcissistic was not happy with any of this. But so she became our focus. And then when she found out about that email that I sent the guy, and she deleted it, she said, oh, I've ruined everything. When she said that she can't leave me, she meant she won't leave me, and she was just about to leave him, and I will never find anyone who loves me, and just all these things. And it started driving me crazy. Like, as she was saying these words, I felt myself smashing to pieces. And I fell to the ground, and I was shaking, and I couldn't. I thought, I've ruined everything. I've ruined. I'm never going to be cared about again. I don't know. And she had to pick me up and drove me home. But I was really in a very, very bad condition. The personalities were just breaking up. It's like one personality would break into 10 personalities. And this was very hard. And then I eventually sort of stabilized as the narcissistic. And then the next day at school, she wasn't around. And then the next day she wasn't around. And then I started getting really worried. And I saw on my forum, at this point, I knew who her husband was on my forum. I knew his alias because she told me that he was on my forum and doing all these things. And then he had left a note saying he's, he believed in someone, and they broke his trust for the last time, and now he's going to shuffle off this mortal coil. And I figured what happened was he found the email, because he knows how to delete or retrieve deleted emails. So I thought what I had done, because the next day she wasn't at school either, I thought what I had done is I killed him. And this was too much for me, because I had all these rules, and one of the rules is you cannot take a life. I wouldn't kill a fly. Literally, I would not, because I didn't think that anyone had the right to take a life. So if I accidentally killed an insect, I felt so bad about it. So I thought, I've killed this guy, and the only option that seemed to me was to kill myself. So I ended up taking about 40 or so extra strength Tylenol, and I thought that would do it. And I went to sleep, and then when I woke up, I wasn't dead, and I thought, oh, this is weird. I thought I would be dead. But I smelled this burning, like as if someone was burning charcoal right under your nose. And I thought, this is weird. But I sort of felt like, well, I'm supposed to be dead, and I'm not. So maybe I'm not going to die. I felt kind of weird. So I thought, I'm going to tell my dad that I don't want to go to school and I think I need to see a doctor. So he took me into the clinic, and I saw the doctor and privately, and explained, what I had taken, and he looked up in his book and he said, okay, yeah, that's a lethal dose. You have to go to the hospital, the emergency room right away. And I'm like, what is this burning smell that I smell? And he's like, oh, that's your liver. If you don't do anything, you'll be dead in 3 days, and it's going to be extremely painful. And he gave me this, he scribbled a note, and he's like, just go to the emergency room and give them this note. And yeah, so I went out and saw my dad and told him, like, I'm supposed to go to the emergency room, and showed him the note. And he's like, oh, why? And I said, I don't know. And then he drove me to the hospital, and I went there, and then they hooked me up to an IV, and they were discussing whether or not I would need a liver transplant, and started pumping meds into me to counter the damage I had done. And so for a week I was in the hospital, and there were I remember at one point I was given meds and I became very allergic to it, and my skin started puffing up a lot and got all red, and I was having trouble breathing, and then the nurses were looking at me and they started laughing and just went away. And then finally they gave me like, oh, I see you're having a bit of an allergic reaction. And then they gave me the meds, and they hated the fact, because I overheard them talking about how I was just taking up space because I was a suicidal person and other people had real problems. And I felt annoyed with that, because it's like, if they knew how, like a person who breaks their leg, because there was a guy who broke his leg skiing, he can break his leg and then get fixed and then go about the rest of his life. But to become suicidal, it takes so much sadness and so much pain that I don't know, the idea of them just looking down on it was really offensive to me. But anyway, so I ended up telling my brother to tell Charlene, the teacher, that I was in the hospital, and she ended up visiting. And it's always weird because the other nurses were looking like, why is this this woman visiting you? And we talked, and I said, is your husband still alive? And she said, yeah, he had taken sleeping pills with alcohol and had passed out. And she was just pacing back and forth thinking like, do I just let him die or should I call an ambulance? And she couldn't decide. And then finally she decided, no, I'll call an ambulance. And then he survived. And I thought, well, I don't know, this sounds weird, but I felt good that at least I followed my own rules, because I thought he was dead and I had the guts to do it. I wasn't sure I would have the guts to go through with a suicide attempt. We weren't supposed to commit suicide because of the rule was you don't take anyone, no one has a right to take the life of another, including yourself. So I don't know. But in this case, it had to be done, I thought, because, I thought I had killed him. So, gotta pay the price as well. But after that, and she told me what had happened. Like, yeah, indeed, he had undeleted the email and then read it and then decided he was going to kill himself. And after that, because of the time when I broke, I guess I lost my focus. If you think of it like all the personalities are connected at one point, and that used to be the darkness holding them all together, and then it became Charlene, and basically she threw them all down and they all couldn't survive. I was in a very bad condition, so I kept switching personalities. I used to dress in black a lot and like trench coat and stuff, and the school became very afraid of me because they thought I was, this was shortly after the school shootings at, it was Ohio, I don't know, anyway. And they thought I was going to kill everybody, I guess. And they were, I was walking down the halls and they didn't know, some teachers were talking, they didn't know I could hear. They're like, oh, why do they even keep that multiple kid in the school? They should kick him out and stuff. And I don't know, I was annoyed with how they were just saying this stuff. But I couldn't, like after I got out of the hospital, I couldn't function anymore. I kept switching. Like I would be in class and I would just switch 10 or 20 times. Eventually the counselors told me like if I need to leave, I can just, go to the counselor's office. And this was happening more and more. It was like my brain was just exploding. And I was in the hospital a few times because the only thing I could think of doing was trying to kill myself. And there are different times where failed suicide attempts and I get found out and stuff. And finally, one of my psychologists, he was meeting with another of, like, I guess his mentor, his superior dude, and they were meeting me together, and I was talking about how it doesn't matter if I go to the hospital and they commit me, because I could just switch personalities and seem okay, and then they'll just release me, which kept happening. So the superior was very annoyed with this, and then he's like, no, you commit him. And they committed me to the adolescent psychiatric ward. And normally you're there for 2 weeks. Like, that's in general, you know, some people are there for a few days. Some people are there for maybe 3 weeks. But I was there for like over 3 months. And I met some more psychologists and a psychiatrist who I ended up having for many, many years after. But being in the psych ward was weird, because it was the first time I felt like I really belonged, because everyone was crazy and I was crazy and it didn't matter, instead of having to hide this and pretend I was okay. And when I told my psychiatrist, because she was asking about how I got in the hospital, and then she's like, you know, we know why you're here. And I was like, what do you mean, you know? And it turns out that a lot of the school staff still had suspected that there was a relationship going on, and they just didn't want to make it a big thing, because if they made it a big thing, it would become a news story. And I could conceivably sue the school for knowing about all this and sort of letting it happen. Anyway, in the adolescent ward, it was basically the stamp of, yes, you do have problems. And one of the things I did was I just kept wanting to be out of the hospital so I could kill myself. And I couldn't really function because I kept switching so much. And there were like some personalities hadn't been out since they were, 8 years old. And like, where am I? What's going on? They didn't understand. So finally the narcissistic came out, and he created this idea that he would create a new personality that wasn't like any of the others. And it's going to be based off the neutral, because that's one people seem to think is the most healthy. And it's going to be called the passive. And the reason it's passive is because it will have no ambition. So this personality has one purpose, and the purpose is to convince everybody in the hospital that I'm okay, so that I'll be discharged, so that I will leave the hospital and then I can kill myself. And it was supposed to be that I would be out really quickly, but it didn't turn out that way. And so the passive just ended up being in the hospital for a really long time, and he ended up making friends in the hospital. And I don't know, it was the first time I had like female attention from people. I guess only crazy girls would like me. I met a girl in the hospital who would end up being like my girlfriend for like 13 years. And so as the passive, I couldn't switch. I had none of the abilities, but I just had to get through the hospital. And at some point, I found that I have friends, I have a life. I don't want to go and kill myself. So I bargained with the narcissistic that if you I get that you want to die, so how about you don't come out anymore and just let me have this life? Because what does it matter if if you're dead or you're just not around, could I just have the life? And the narcissistic agreed, but with the condition that they will all go under. It's like in my head, if you could imagine that dark room with the curved ceiling, the dome-shaped ceiling above, and then this round enclosure. It's as if the floor, because everything's black except the spotlight, the floor suddenly turned into tar, and every personality sunk into this, and then it solidified again. And the passive was just on top of this, and there was nothing else. That's kind of how it felt. That suddenly I was alone, and I didn't have the voices in my head, and it got really scary. I felt really lonely, and I was panicking a lot. But anyway, yeah. So then I became single, and I'm still the passive, and I still don't have access to my other personalities, which is that was 2001, so it's been, I don't know, 15 years now that I've been living. And over time, I got some of my ambition back. I realized, like, I want to do art. So I didn't know the first thing about, I wanted to be an artist in high school with my teacher and everything, but that didn't work out. And I applied to go to art school after high school was over. And I didn't actually graduate. I didn't have enough credits to graduate, but what the school did is they sort of made up some courses for me so that I'd be able to graduate, because they did not want me in the school. So I graduated, and then I applied to go to like an art school, and then the art school lost my... Oh no, the art school wasn't very good, and I ended up visiting it, and it's like, this doesn't seem very good. But I heard this other school was better, and I applied to go there, and then they lost my transcript, so I couldn't, and I would have to wait a year until the next program. So I just had this year where I wasn't doing anything, and I was still living at home, and with my parents, they were sort of, I don't know, they never really asked, much about what was going on. And one time, my teacher came over, and she met my mom, and my mom didn't say anything, even though she went into my room. And it's like, why would a teacher come to a student's house, go into the bedroom, close the door, and then you don't ask what's happening? But my parents were like this, like really head in the sand. They don't want to see it. They don't want to hear about it. They don't want to know it. But yeah, so they were very just oblivious to everything. And I had this girl who liked me from the hospital, but I didn't really like her. But she became obsessed about me, and she told me how, she was just going to kill herself if she couldn't be with me and stuff. And I started thinking, God damn it, I just wanted... I don't know, I felt still pretty suicidal, but I felt like, well, my life is kind of forfeit. Like, I can't do much with it, but if I could help this other person and make it so they don't die, then I guess that's good. And meanwhile, I was still with Charlene, the teacher. So I started feeling guilty about this, though, because I felt like, well, with the teacher, she actually said it's fine if I'm with both of them at the same time. And with the other chick, she said the same thing. And it's like, oh, it's fine if you, whatever. And I thought, no, that's wrong. So I told Charlene, like, I can't be with you, because, I mean, I was stupid. Obviously now I can think of a million reasons not to be with her. but I was just super blinded at the time. Like the amount of debt I felt towards her for caring about me. I couldn't see straight anymore. And it was the first time I felt happy in my life and loved and cared for. So it was so hard to go back to a life where that's not the case. But I let her know, like, no, I can't be with both of you. I'm going to choose to be with the other chick. And so she was sort of okay with that, I guess. And then for the next however many years I was with that other girl. And so yeah, I couldn't go to school because I lost my transcript. So what happened is I started going to figure drawing. I found a figure drawing place because I was still online. I didn't have my forum anymore. I closed my forum after I thought the guy killed himself. I just said this forum is dead. And I started going to figure drawing. I would take the bus and the SkyTrain, which is just like a train in Vancouver, and carry all my equipment. And it was a couple of hours, and then go to figure drawing. And I did this, I think, 3 times a week. And I got to the point that I was getting better, and I figured I don't think I need school. I don't think I need school to become an artist. I just need to keep doing this thing. And I had to see a psychiatrist twice a week, I think it was. And they also put me on disabilities. So I was getting money from the government because I was cuckoo bananas. And so what this afforded me is time to develop as an artist. And so I was pretty much, trying to learn as much as I could on my own how to be an artist, and feeling like it's not like it is now with YouTube and art stuff everywhere. There was really, there was forums that you could go to, but the information wasn't readily available. So I ended up studying with some private teachers. Whenever I found someone who could really draw or paint, I wanted to study with them. And I didn't touch the money that the government gave me because I felt like this is not my money, it's the public's money. So, but eventually my psychiatrist talked me into, they're giving this to you because you really cannot function. And I ended up buying a car with it because I had all this saved up money, and bought a $5,000 car. And anyway, it was very bad car. And yeah, so I was learning art, and then when YouTube started, I would go on and I would search for art tutorials, and there was nothing. And so I eventually figured that, okay, I'm going to make tutorials just in case someone's like me and really doesn't know anything. I can at least help someone who's one step below me get to my level. And so I started a YouTube channel, and then shortly after, Mark Crilly started his, and then a bunch of other channels came up, and then art channels were pretty common. But anyway, I've talked about this in my To Become an Artist video. So this is less about art and more about the rest. I don't know, there's not much more, because I was with that girl until it was pretty hard though. She was from a culture that she had rich parents and I didn't, and at least my dad stopped being abusive once I think it was grade 11 or 12, I joined Taekwondo, and when I did that, he stopped being abusive, and because he was afraid because I could fight back. And then at some point I decided to get buff, but I was I was less than 120 pounds and 5'11", so that's pretty skinny. And I was always super self-conscious about my weight. So when I was 23, I decided I would try and bulk up. and I got to 130, and I was thinking like, wow, that's a lot. And then I went, I was having 6 meals a day and taking all these protein shakes and stuff, just to put on weight. And then one day I went to a friend's house for a sleepover, and I came back the next day and I had lost 5 pounds. And I thought, well, if it's this easy to lose weight, I don't really want to be spending my money on all this stuff, because I didn't feel I could maintain it. So yeah, I was at like 125, and then I don't know, I was pretty skinny until I got older, and then I just became skinny fat. And then at some point I went with my ex, my fiance, because we were I guess engaged, and I went to Taiwan, and I couldn't like walk up this. There's steps everywhere to all the temples and all the areas, and I was getting super tired, and I realized like I need to get more healthy. But over like the years, our relationship was pretty tumultuous, and she was borderline. She had borderline personality disorder, and if you're not sure what that is, it's like you keep flipping between two modes of, you either see the world as black or white, and you see people as like the greatest. So either I was like perfect and I had no flaws, or I was horrible and I was just the worst person ever. And I kept switching in her mind like this, and it was very difficult. But at least eventually she stopped being suicidal, and then she didn't really want to be with me anymore. And I had a lot of trouble with that because I really cared for her. And by this time, I'd been making YouTube videos for, I don't know, 5 years, 6 years? No. Because I started in 2006, and I don't know, I guess, yeah, 6 years. Throughout, I told myself, like, after a few years, I told myself I'll make YouTube videos every week, and tried to stick to that. But in my life inside, I mean, I learned stuff from private teachers. In 2010, I decided to go to film school, to animation school, and learn animation. This was because she would tell me like what a loser I am and stuff, and I thought if I go to school, maybe I wouldn't be such a loser. Maybe I could get a job and not be on disabilities anymore, and not have to see a psychiatrist all the time. And it's weird. It was really weird because of the YouTube thing. How on YouTube I was a personality. People, like, I was in quotes famous. I only had like 40,000 subscribers or something, but still, it's like. And in real life, I did not feel that way at all. I felt broken. I was depressed all the time. And over the years being with my ex, I became super suicidal as well. It was constantly just how shitty I am, how much I suck. And anyway, so yeah, I don't know, it was really hard juggling these two. But after animation school, I didn't get a job in the animation industry, but I ended up joining communities and eventually getting work as an illustrator, freelance illustrator. And I wasn't making much, but a little bit. And YouTube, I was also making some money on YouTube, so it was enough to, go on. But after I split up with my fiance, it just didn't feel like there was much point to anything. But I still wanted to keep going. And it was really hard because so many times I wanted to talk about my life with my audience because it felt important. It felt like this is not small. It's not like I don't know, this didn't affect me at all. Like, everything is really, it felt really important. Like, why, if I'm trying to teach art and someone says, how did you have the time to, get better? I didn't know how to say, well, I was on disabilities and I had, I lived with my parents and I had a lot of time. Because then it's like, why were you on disabilities? Oh, because I, had a dissociative disorder. What's that? Where'd that come from? And it all connects back to the past of, that stuff. So I don't know. I felt like I wanted to tell people, but I was afraid. I was afraid of people. First of all, the biggest fear was people saying, no, you didn't. You're just making this up. And over time, what I've been struggling with for the past bunch of years is when the personalities went under, when they went away and they left me, it's my own choice, but left me as the only personality, I am missing so much. I don't feel joy. Like the feeling of happiness or joy, I haven't felt that since 2001. And I can feel anger and I can feel sadness, but I can't feel good. And what I started doing is I acted as if I was feeling good, even when I wasn't. And when I was more depressed, I would, like, people wouldn't like being around me. So I learned to fake it. That's why I started each video. I would, hey everyone, Sycra Yasin here, because if I talk like this, no one will know I'm fucking depressed. Yeah, and then a few years ago, I met Flavia, who's my wife now, and she let me know about just how depressed I sounded, because I didn't know I sounded that bad, and she was just sent me an email, and it was really well written, and I get a lot of fan mail. I get like a lot. Not trying to brag or anything, it's just I get a lot, and her email was really well written, and it's pretty rare to encounter that, like someone who writes really well. And so we ended up talking a lot, and she was in Romania and I was in Vancouver, and eventually I thought I would meet her, and I arranged a ticket to Romania, and then I realized like I can't wait that long, so I arranged a closer ticket, and when we met, and things were good, and then just ended up moving here to Romania, and things have been getting better. I'm still working on the feeling thing, figuring out who I am. One thing I noticed is I never was doing art for myself. I was always like, I kind of hated art. It was something that I was good at, and I just wanted to be good at something because I had such low self-esteem. Because, I mean, looking back at my past, it's pretty obvious, my parents told me they didn't really, or at least my mom told me all the time that, didn't really want me and all this stuff. So I didn't feel all that special. I didn't feel like anyone would really care about me. And I thought maybe if I'm really good at art, then people would like me. But no matter how much people would say they liked my work or they liked me, I just have so much trouble believing it. And I mean, recently, a few years ago, I started pointy chins because I was looking at my gallery and it was just like, I don't like any of this. Is there anything I do like? And I started thinking, maybe if I do the stuff I did before I was the passive, when I was still the other personalities, what they liked, maybe that would be better. And it seemed to work for a while. And then recently Flavia's like she's doing her master's in psychology right now, and she's helping me a lot with my brain. She's helped me a lot more than all the years of the other therapists and stuff that I've been through. And I'm trying to figure out who I am and what it is that I want to do. And when I say these things, it literally is, I don't know who I am. And so when I created like K, the mascot K, to figure out like, well, what would my mascot be? It was really like starting from, what do I like? I figured that I like faces and drawing people. And I used to think you have to learn how to draw everything and paint everything. And when you learn how to paint, it sort of is everything. Like you can paint anything. If you know how to paint one thing, you can pretty much paint anything else. If you don't know, then it means you don't really understand how to paint. How to draw is a bit different, but even then, if you study something, it's just form construction. Like, oh, how do you paint a figure? Well, it follows all the same rules as painting a chair. It's just, you know, with a figure, you've got more complex forms and anatomy and things. Anyway, so that's where I am right now. I still don't have feelings, like positive feelings much, but I feel like I'm getting closer to them. I feel like I'm getting closer to some of my old personalities. I'm noticing I experience some things that I didn't before. I still have depression a lot. There are times when I get really, really suicidal and I think, what is the point? And honestly, at times I can't find an answer. But I figure, well, it makes more sense. I watched my last video that I did. I drew in the style that I draw in my black sketchbook, and something I don't show people, my secret sketchbook, but I got so many positive comments that it was just overwhelming and felt like I don't want to hide anymore. I've been so ashamed of my past, ashamed of the relationship with the teacher, ashamed of being on disabilities, which I got off disabilities quite a few years ago when I was making enough to support myself. Yeah. I don't know if this helps at all. It's pretty selfish. I just wanted to be understood, be known for who I am, not have to hide or pretend to be something I'm not. If you got this far and you're still listening, I really appreciate it. I'm sorry I took up so much of your time, but I really do appreciate that you would listen to my story. And thank you.